Continue with Senator Marco Rubio. So the President of the United States occupying force and sat there while Raul Castro literally said that the America has spent more than a century oppressing the people of Cuba.
Well, the person who's been oppressing the people of Cuba is Fidel Castro and now his brother Raul. And I wish we would have had a president attending there that would have reminded the world and the hemisphere and Raul Castro of the true nature of the Cuban regime. It is a country that now enslaves 13 million people with no opportunities, no future, no political freedoms. It is a country that helps North Korea evade United Nations sanctions. It is a country that gives safe harbor to fugitives of American justice, including a woman that killed a police officer, including people that have stolen millions of dollars of Medicare fraud from the taxpayers of the United States. It's a country that exiled over 2 million people to the United States and around the world. It's the reason why this is called the Freedom Tower. I wish we had had a president there to remind Raul Castro of the true nature of the Castro Revolution.
But this is an ongoing thing. He's apologized for America. He won't recognize radical Islam. But I want to go to the Iranian deal. The president of Iran literally said that sanctions should be lifted immediately. No inspections, he said. And Obama himself, the president, admitted that there's a 13-year breakout, immediate zero-time breakout. In other words, the seal of approval for Iranian nuclear weapons. What's your reaction to that?
Again, Iran now gets to keep all of the infrastructure they need to build a nuclear weapon. They continue to be able to build long-range rockets that were untouched by this agreement. They continue to sponsor state terrorism all over the world. In fact, they'll have more money to do it now that the sanctions are lifted. And you're right, it could be less than 13 years. If they follow the North Korean model, at some point over the next few years, they'll cook up some excuse for why they need a weapon, and they'll build it because they retain all the infrastructure they need to enrich uranium and reprocess plutonium.
I want to talk about preconditions before you sit down with a rogue regime, state sponsor of terror like Iran or a country like that, or Cuba. You know, in the case of Iran, they said the destruction of Israel is non-negotiable.
Right.
In the middle of negotiations, they said that. In the middle of negotiations, they were chanting death to America. If you were president, and that was happening in the middle of negotiations, what would a President Marco Rubio do?
If I were president, and when I am president, the first message that will be sent to Iran is you can either have an economy or you can have a nuclear weapon, but you cannot have both. And in fact, you won't get the weapon no matter what, because if necessary, we'll take whatever steps are necessary to prevent you from pursuing that. The second point is any negotiation with Iran should have included three elements: no long-range rocket, no sponsorship of terrorism around the world, and no enrichment and reprocess. And in addition to that, there should have been a clear recognition on their part that Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish state.
And that has to be a precondition. But in the middle of negotiations, if they're saying the destruction of Israel is non-negotiable, should that be a deal killer?
Well, absolutely, because again, this is a country that's made clear that they want to destroy a strong ally of the United States. They're building the mechanism to deliver a destructive weapon in a long-range rocket. We know they've made significant progress in the enrichment of uranium, which is what it takes to build these sorts of weapons. And they get to retain all of that in place. So at the end of the day, this deal, I think, leads at some point over the next 5 to 7 years into a threshold nuclear power.
As president, would you do whatever it took, even militarily, to prevent them from getting a weapon?
Absolutely. And look, if on the way the president's pursued this deal, it's not binding on a future Congress, and it's not binding on a future president.
Why can't the president say radical Islam? Why does
I have no idea. I don't really know the answer to that, other than perhaps the best I could think of is he thinks that radical Islam's problem with America is a grievance of some sort. They don't like something we've done. It's not a grievance. It's an ideological difference, not just with America, but with the world. They want, in the case of ISIS, they want everyone to live according to their radical interpretation of Sunni Islam, or be burned in cages, or be beheaded. And that's the nature of that. And by the way, there are millions of Muslims around the world that call it radical Islam as well.
What about a Rubio doctrine? What would a Rubio doctrine be?
The Rubio doctrine would be that the United States is the indispensable power on the planet. In the absence of American leadership, the result is a vacuum. That vacuum is filled by chaos. So, for example, we need to be involved in the Asia-Pacific region. We need to reinvigorate our alliances with South Korea and Japan and the Philippines and others to blunt some of the aggression you now see from Russia on China on their territorial claims. In Western Europe, we need to reinvigorate NATO to once again stop the sort of Putin's efforts to relitigate the end of the Cold War.
Let me ask about Vietnam. We lost 58,000 Americans, many others injured. We lost 4,000 in Iraq, many others were injured. We start wars, we politicize them, we pull out too early. Iraq, for example, now has been taken over by ISIS. Fallujah, Mosul, Tikrit, cities that we had won, victory at hand. how do we ask American men and women to fight for this country, and then we lose these wars seemingly politically after the fact?
Well, first of all, in Iraq, after the end of the war, there was stability in that country. Not perfect. It wasn't Canada, but it was a stable country. And then the U.S. pulled out, and what happened is Maliki used that as a license to go after the Sunni population. That is what created some of the conditions that allowed ISIS to return into the country. Yeah. That is a direct result of the U.S. withdrawal from Iraq prematurely. You're seeing the same mistake being potentially made in Afghanistan now.
Let me ask you a comment Dick Cheney made, the former vice president. He said that Obama is doing exactly what one would do to take America down. Created a lot of controversy. Thoughts?
Well, I can tell you his foreign policy has been deeply destructive. Now we have the architect of his failed foreign policy running for president of the United States, whether it was the reset with Russia, whether it was the outreach to Iran and all these sorts of things. On issue after issue, the Obama foreign policy has been an abject failure.
All right, we're going to pick it up there. We're going to talk about Hillary when we get back and much more. And this is up next tonight on Hannity.
I'm getting ready to do something too. I'm running for president.
All right, Hillary Clinton makes it official. Senator Marco Rubio reacts to her announcement right after the break.